Today, I am delighted to welcome Clint Padgett to the show. Clint is the CEO and president of Project Success Inc., a project management methodology that delivers results across all industries. He is also a ForbesBooks author and the host of the Conversation with Mr. Clinton M. Padgett podcast. With a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering from Georgia Tech, an MBA from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University, and backed by over 30 years of experience, Clint has helped some of the world's largest companies maximize their business outcomes, optimize their teams, and develop lasting project success practices rooted in accountable processes and deep personal commitment from team members. So, Clint, welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here. Yeah, that sounds great until you say 30 years experience. I'm looking around, where's my dad? And I realize, oh, that's me now.
Yeah, I keep doing that. I keep looking at things going, well, that was 20 years ago, and then realize it's 40 years
Yeah,
ago.
exactly.
And it's kind of, it's bizarre. I saw some stat a while ago that in the 80s, so I think it was 85 or something like that, in 1985, the end of the Second World War was, I can't do the maths, whatever. It's the same distance to now to the 80s,
Yeah.
and that was kind of my childhood growing up, and I'm like, yeah, it's a
That
different.
can't possibly be right.
Kid,
Then it maths correctly. So
exactly. My kids, kind of how they shake their heads at some of the life that we lived in the 80s, as we were talking about with phone calls earlier and things like that.
exactly.
Sorry, I told you I'd go off a rabbit hole, didn't I? Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit more than that, behind that that blurb that I read out.
Yeah, so right out of high school, I grew up in the rural south of the U.S., and right out of high school, I joined the Navy, spent 6 years in the Navy on an aircraft carrier, and got out of that. I was an electrician's mate, and actually, one of my cruises, we went to England and spent some time in Portsmouth, so that was interesting. And then I did 6 years of that, and you work basically 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week. And so after 6 years of that, I thought, there's probably something better to do in my life than this. So I got out of the Navy and I went to work in a shipyard. And there's probably no greater motivation to go to college than in the world than to work in a shipyard in Norfolk, Virginia in December and January, which is exactly what I was doing. You walk into the shipyard every day, the wind is coming off the water, it's cutting right through you, it's super cold. So after 2 months of that, I thought, okay, maybe college isn't such a bad idea. So I was lucky enough, I'd always wanted to be an engineer, and I was lucky enough to get accepted to Georgia Tech, where I got my EE degree. When I graduated, I basically walked across the street to Coca-Cola. If you ever been to Atlanta, can't get an easier commute than that. Coca-Cola's on one corner, right across the street, Georgia Tech. Started at Coke, spent about 6 years there in the engineering group, and then in 96, the city of Atlanta, or 94, the city of Atlanta got awarded the Olympic Games for 1996. I wanted to work on that project, so I ended up leaving the Coca-Cola company, going to work for Project Success, to work on the Olympic project at Coca-Cola. And my goal was to do that for a few years and then go back to Coke, but I ended up loving this job so much that 30 years later, I'm still doing it.
Oh wow, brilliant! That with the Olympic side of it, what was that? I'm going to dive straight into that really, because obviously that you talk. I read there's a book behind me somewhere around mega project, how big things get done. Brent Fleidberg, and I was reading The Gorilla in the Cockpit. Well, I'm reading it at the moment on the Kindle, where they talk about mega projects. And these Olympic Games, the Olympic events are those every 4 years, and the Commonwealth Games that were in the UK are these huge mega projects. And I'm not sure what other kind of projects you'd be doing. How did that contrast to some of the other things that you've done?
So from a time-wise perspective, they're not that difficult, or different, I should say. They're difficult, but they're not that different. So I've been involved in large construction projects in Times Square in New York, One Bryant Park, which is, it's a huge building in Times Square, all the way down to semiconductor chip design projects I'm on a 4-year project right now at Coca-Cola and an innovation group. So the Olympics, we also work on all the FIFA World Cups for Coca-Cola as well. And by the way, if your listeners don't ask me for tickets, because I don't get them, so I can't give them to you. It's not how it works. They say I'm the best person to plan because I'm not a fanboy, so it's great.
Yeah. I was talking last night to my mate, the fact that it's in the US next year, and we were like, "Oh, should we go?" He's like, "Should we go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we won't get a pass to go there from our better halves to go out." But then he spotted he probably, yeah, it'd be all right to say that. The fact that he's got part of his company that he's working for at the moment has an office in Texas, and I don't know whether it's Dallas or it was Houston, but basically it's kind of like they go out there quite regular, and he's like, oh, so yeah, depending who's playing where and when and things like that, and he's kind of like see if I can carry his bags for him.
Yeah,
But yeah, it'd be
exactly.
quite interesting.
I did some work. So I was working on the FIFA World Cup in 2014 in Brazil, and the Brazilians absolutely love their football, right? Just absolutely love it. And for those Americans, that's FUTBOL. It's not the one we talk about. And
Yeah,
it's so we would go to these places like Recife or Brasilia or wherever. And the first thing they'd always want to do is go down to the pitch. And I know nothing about soccer. So I'm like, what's the pitch? That's a baseball term. What is this pitch? And they go down, and I'm not kidding, man. You go down on the field, and it's like the angels were singing and the choir was playing. Their faces would just light up, and they would, oh, it's the pitch. I'm like, it's just grass. But
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mentioned Wrexham, and I've become a Wrexham fan over the years, and I bang on about it a bit. But we were at a game the other day when they secured promotion up to the Championship again. And one of my mates who's there, we were all down on the pitch. As you pitch invasion, not meant to, and all that stuff, and potentially get fines and stuff. And I can understand from a security and safety point of view because of historically the British in the 80s, the football uh, troubles that were around then weren't ideal. But there's a picture I've got of my mate with a couple of blades of the grass going like that. He's just picked a bit of grass and popped it in his pocket, and it is hallowed turf, isn't it?
I've only been to two official either FIFA matches in my life, and both of them England was playing. And it's just so funny because on both events there would be like 100 people, 100 policemen on the field, and 98 of them would be in front of the English people,
Yeah,
and two people
yeah,
for the rest of the stadium.
yeah. It's unfortunate that we are passionate's probably the word you describe about them, and the approach to sport and the way. But then I suppose some of the other European teams are kind of similar as well. They did some of the places around, but it's interesting because from a Coca-Cola point of view, what is the role that you're doing, the project that you're doing as part of those events?
Sure, it's planning their activations around the Olympics, FIFA World Cups, or whatever big event, worldwide sporting event we're working with them on. It's, they've got all their activations to get ready for the event, whether that's product inside the venues, marketing leading up to the events. What else? It's what goes on the pitch, the field of play. What products they're going to serve, how they're going to get it there. It's all the logistics items about where they store it. Is it going to be pre-chilled? How does it work? So it's quite intensive. We start planning those things 2 years out to get ready.
Wow, because I suppose because it's not just going to be bottles and cans, is it? You're going to have syrups for the dispensers and things like that would be used on those sort of things. And
Yeah, I think
again, it's
I'd
not
like to
just
say it's
Coca-Cola, is
much
it?
like
It's
planning a party at your own house. It really is. It's just a much bigger scale, right? Because just like you're planning a party at your house, you'd say, all right, I need to have the beer pre-chill somewhere else in case it runs out in this location. I won't have time to cool it down later. So let's do it now so that it'll be ready and it'll be chilled. And then I got to have trash cans in the right places for the recycled, for the cans or the bottles to go into. I'm going to send out
cool, yeah.
invitations. I'm going to advertise. So it's much like planning a party. It's obviously on a much larger scale. And then I
Yeah.
always joke that you probably don't have governmental relations that you have in your personal house, but you kind of do because you can't serve alcohol to somebody who's too young, and you
Yeah.
got your guest list. You're not selling tickets, but it's a lot of the same. It's just much bigger.
Wow. Yeah, I never thought of it like that because you just think, well, it's just people just do these things, and it's fascinating that these because I did talk um, to one of my guests who's her name has gone out of my brain. I can see her face. I read her name earlier today. She's based in Brazil, and she does event coordination things and kind of IT event things and things like that. And kind of, and I'm going to a conference tomorrow and the day after the APM's conference, and I always get really intrigued about behind the curtain, right? How's this all? How do people coordinate? And I've been involved in a couple of small event things, and it's just like that whole, like as an Olympic Games, you've got the element of the the foods, the drinks, that sort of thing. And major brand sponsors like Coca-Cola. But you've also got all that thing of the networks and the
Media
IT
center,
that
all
is
that. Yeah.
that kind of availability for the media center, which is such a massive undertaking, and then tracking where people are going, understanding the flow, and talking about that. And I imagine the AI is kicking into this a lot these days around, right, you've got these events, how are we going to build them? How are we going to let people in so that the flow around the building makes them go past things to buy the concessions and that, rather than avoiding the concessions? And then it's all the data science that goes around those sort of things. And when they're designing these stadia, and obviously in the US, the stadiums there are like another world compared to the ones over here in the UK that are shoved in between some houses.
But we got our work cut out for us. We got to figure out how to keep people out of crawling through the ceiling and avoiding the ticket process altogether, which is what happened in the CONCACAF, something that was recent. We had
Right.
a sporting event down. It was a soccer game down in Miami, and some
Right.
fans. It got out of control for sure.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking, isn't it? Yeah, massive. So tell us a little bit. So obviously you worked into Coca-Cola, you said to build this. So what kind of projects have you been? Is it been in that kind of similar range, or have you spread it across the different phases? Because I've been IT project manager, a little dip into trying to organise my family, but other than that, I've not kind of stepped in. I look at the building projects and things like that, and um, the more change rather than the more IT projects. And I always look at those thinking, we need that specialist knowledge. How have you found that sort of going between different industries?
So I think that's what makes my job beautiful, because I don't have to, they call soccer the beautiful game. Well, for me, this is the beautiful work, because I get to work on many, many different kinds of projects. So as I mentioned earlier, I've been on big, tall construction projects. I've been on semiconductor projects within Coca-Cola. I've been on HR projects, IT projects, security projects, the worldwide sport projects, innovation groups. I've spent a lot of time in my career at Caterpillar. I've also spent some time over in your world at JCB on projects in product development, manufacturing, design, and engineering. And so the beautiful part is I don't have to be the expert in what it is I'm planning. That's what the team is for. I'm just there to facilitate the process and make sure that we get everything connected from Joe, Bob, and Fred, and how it all interconnects, and with the right durations and the right sequencing, and then help them compress back to meet whatever deadlines they've got for management. So for me, it's dependent on I don't need specific industry specific knowledge about a certain thing. Like, I don't have to know how a curtain wall gets installed on a 40-story building. I just have to know that it needs to be installed, and it needs to happen before this next task can happen. And I need to have somebody on the team who says, yep, I'll do that. It's my job to make sure that happens. And we're going to need 6 weeks for the curtain walls on a 44th floor. Or if I'm doing a different kind of project, semiconductor chip design, where we're trying to develop the semiconductor out through tape out, then I have to have engineers, design engineers, and analog and digital engineers on the team, and test engineers who know the specifics. And I just know that the process generally looks like this, and you can't test it if you haven't designed it. And all that has to be done before you go to tape out. So it's not industry specific so much as just relying on the team to help you build it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's always been something of depending on the scale and size, I suppose, and the team that you've got there. Because I know that I would be, if someone said, right, Nigel, come and build this bridge across wherever, and I'd be like, well, no, I've done some decking at home. That's probably as far as I go, and I know to mix some concrete and things. And I've got a friend of mine who's project manager in housing. So he ends up he's site manager, and he's essentially a project manager at the end of the day, isn't it? And how knowing the things that you don't know in that discipline, like you don't know the health and safety stuff, say for or union laws and things like that, where you might be dealing with unionized skilled staff or things like that. Now, these are things I can pick up just little bits around there, but there's going to be things that I don't know. If someone's coming into the IT industry, knowing the security side of things, data stuff and things, they probably wouldn't necessarily be aware of. How do you approach that? when you like you say, you've got your team. Say you walk in there new, right? You've got a project. So we say, you've got to do this, Clint. You've got to start a new team. How do you know? How do you know who to hire? How do you know who to bring onto that team so that you haven't got some knowledge missing? How do you go about that? Or is there generally a sort of a core team of expertise that you drop into?
I think that's an interesting question. It's usually I depend on. So when I get dropped, I don't just come out of the blue. Basically, I'm working with somebody at the client side who says we want you to come in and help facilitate this project and help us get it on track or keep it on track. I work with that person internally and say, well, who's going to be on the team with us? What do we need to do, and who should be there? Do we need to have somebody from health and safety? Is that an important piece of this? Do we need somebody from the tool shed? Do they need to be a part of this? Do we need somebody from the labor, you need to be a part of the project? So working with the internal person, usually they'll be able to help me flesh out who should be in the meeting. And then during the charter session, which is where we identify what the scope of the project is and agree to that scope, usually you'll find if you're missing somebody at that point, and you can invite them before you go into the planning piece. And worst case scenario is you get into planning and you realize, hey, you know what? We don't have Jane, and Jane's an integral part of this, but we flew everybody together, so we can't not do it. So let's go ahead and finish it. And then we'll have to bring Jane in after the fact and have her insert her knowledge and correct us where we're wrong. But in the perfect world, you would get this information up front, so you'd have all the right people in the room together. But it's not me that decides that. It's me working with somebody internal at the company who's bringing me in that says, we have this project. And I would say, okay, well, based on my knowledge, here's the people we need to make sure, but I need to, you need to tell me who else should be there.
Yeah. No, having that is kind of not going in cold, because it is always a thing of thinking that, and I suppose I kind of have, because in the industry, I'm in IT, in the industry I've been in, I've stepped across a lot of different technologies where I haven't got a clue. Like when I stepped into networks, but there was a lot of network engineers, network architects, security engineers that knew what they were doing, and it was kind of like, yeah, okay, so I could kind of get it out, see that. It's just sometimes, to me, I always see it as this big, massive leap to some of these things.
And I think the other part of that, Nigel, is I would argue you should not be the subject matter expert, because if I'm the subject matter expert and I'm planning it, then I'm planning it my way, and that might not be the right way. I need to rely on the team to decide what is the right way to do it for them, for their project, in their location, where they are. Otherwise, I'll end up with a plan that doesn't work for them, because I can't plan it my way. It has to be their way. So I don't need to be the subject matter expert. What I like to say is I need to have enough 50,000 foot level knowledge to ask mostly good, sometimes stupid questions, to say things like, wait a minute, I'm confused. How can you do this if you haven't done that? And sometimes they say, well, they're not related. Most of the time they go, oh yeah, you're right, we need to do that. So I just get to stand off and at a 50,000 foot level, just look at it. And in the end, what I say is nobody will understand the project, how it all fits together better than I will. I can't do the task. I have no idea how to do the task, but I understand how they work and how they interact.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I can see we've got coming from that whole. I've done that scenario of asking, as you say, the stupid question, kind of going through a plan, making some assumptions, sometimes forcing the hand of some of the team to say, right, we're going to do this, 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 and wait for them to say, no, you can't do that because of X, Y, Z, and hope they say that. And if they don't, and then it doesn't work, then, well, yeah, that's the assumption-based things, because it's that kind of bias that you've got off your own experience, and it kind of like, I suppose, those stupid questions are the ones that are the challenge questions that help people think differently, to say, oh yeah, I never thought about doing it like that. And you because they always think, no, this is the way it has to be done, this is where it has to be. I was talking to some friends the other day around, they were going into new organizations, and when they got into their people, we can't do that, we've always done it like this. And it's kind of like, well, why? Well, don't know really. And then you unpack it, and then you find out, well, actually, you don't need to do it like that. There are consequences of doing something different, like having a different shift and bringing in some training. We've got to train a new person. It's not a problem. Yeah, but we'd have to train another. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You mean and I went on a training course a few years ago now. It was a conference type thing with the internal thing. They were doing some gamified training. And it was about negotiation, and we had two teams and a central person. And we are three teams, actually. We were negotiating with this central sort of person to get resources, but we could negotiate with the others as well and kind of swap things. And yeah, things of different, but it wasn't Lego, it was like blocks and stuff, but different sizes, shape meant different things. And we had to build something. And all three groups put in place unspecified constraints. And we weren't a young inexperienced groups of people. They were sort of one step below VP and a couple of steps below VP, and I managed to get there carrying someone's bag somewhere. But you know what I mean? There were senior people there, and we were all doing the same thing of putting those assumed constraints in there. And I think all our teams do that. And sometimes finding those is really hard to find those, because we'll end up not having the knowledge to be able to challenge them with knowledge and be able to push harder. So sometimes you just take them as written, but actually they're not really there.
Sometimes it's funny. I always say that I ask stupid questions, but I find that they're mostly not. Or there'll be the younger person on the team who doesn't know either, and so it's good for them to learn. Or I'll ask a question, and everybody's nodding, looking at the SVP, going, "Yeah, exactly. Why? Yeah, let me hear the answer to that," because it's something they wanted to ask, but were afraid to. You know, I can ask the question that politically they can't. So, I can say this is stupid without being fired.
Yeah, well, and I've been there when I've been the external person, where some people, senior people, have been a little bit disingenuous to their team, whereas I can be the kind of, well, yeah, you can get rid of me if you want to. It's fine. I'm a consultant. You're paying whatever, but you can challenge, you know, in a respectful way, things that people would concern about their performance being marked down for that challenge in the wrong place in front of someone else that makes someone uncomfortable. But as a consultant going in, you're bloody clever clogs that's come in there, as the phrase would go. Right, that's how you'd be treated, and it wouldn't jeopardize what's going on. You talk about Project Success Incorporated and on your blurb, and you want to tell us a little bit about what Project Success Incorporated is?
Yeah, sure. We're a training company and consulting company that does nothing but project management. So we teach classes in project management. We have a 2-day course called the Project Success Method, and that's based on the orange book you can see over my shoulder here. That you can it's on Amazon as well. And then we teach a 2-day class in that, and then we actually So we used to only want to be a training company when we first started. I didn't found the company. I came in about 10 years into it. And what we found when people would take the training and go, "This is really great. Really great. Can you come help us do it though?" So, you know, you taught us in the classroom how to fish, but can you actually come stand beside us in our stream with our rocks and our boulders and our issues and help us? And so over time, we probably do more consulting than we do training. But after we do the training, we come in and we work with the client to either plan a project where we help them navigate in their environment with their terminology and their team and their set of issues to get the process put into place. Some companies we worked at for 40 years. We've been at Caterpillar for 40 years, Coca-Cola for 40 years. I mean, and just different groups. In some companies, I have one client who says, "Clint, we love the fact that you told me you'd work yourself out of a job, and you did. You came in, you did your team, and within 3 years, you had the whole team trained to support your 500 company, so a big company. You had everybody trained, and we were able to do it on our own, and then you rode off into the sunset, and we just call you when we need you." So that's really what we do, is we train, and then we help people apply that training in their unique situations with the goal of having them be successful without us. That's really what we try to do. So we're like the anti-consultant.
Yeah, I like that way of doing it, because you will you kind of do yourself out of a job, but that's where the value is, isn't it? And then how many times have people been on training? I remember doing time management training years ago, or other training, and you do it all. And you come back to the office and you go,
"Now what?"
"It was all right. It was interesting. I've got the manual on my desk. So tick that. I've got the manual on my desk. Have I actually applied it? Always?" And because, as you say, trying to implement change, because to be quite frank, if you're putting in new project processes, procedures, and disciplines, it's business change, isn't it? And actually, people don't realize they're doing business change And actually, you should be looking in there and go, right, we're doing business change now. So what's the business change we've got to implement? You can't just do the course and then start doing it, because everyone needs to buy into that business change. It's like if you turn around and say, right, we want to turn ourselves into a completely agile organization and run in agile fashions, or like a Spotify. But that's a massive business change to do that. And you have to consciously manage that. But doing it on your own is really hard. So having that coach, it's like having, go back to the soccer sort of thing of having the you got the coaches who stand there and tell you things. You've got the coaches who are there on the pitch going, this is how you do it, kind of thing. You've got slightly different, depending on where you are in your maturity as an organization. You'd need different demands, don't you?
Yeah, and so the beauty of us coming in, you kind of alluded to it, as an outside consultant, you can say things that nobody else really can. And in the training class, we're talking about, so our approach is really people-centric, people-oriented. So we want the people on the team to make their plan for their project. And so some of our rules are they have to be in the room. So I can't assign somebody who's not in the room, because then they don't know they've been assigned and they won't have any accountability to get it done. And most of the world lives in a matrix organization, and I can't make you do it because you don't actually work for me. You work for your functional manager, and you're dotted line to my project and 5 other projects. So I need you to hold yourself accountable. And one of the ways I can do that is by having you say, that's my task, I own it. So now you're accountable for it. The second thing is I ask you, okay, what do you need from other people to do your work? In technical terms, I'm asking you, what are the predecessors to your task? But what I'm really asking is, who's going to hold you up? What do you need from Joe, Frank, Fred, and Sue before you can start your work? And then when you get that, the third thing I ask him is, how long do you need to do that work? And, don't tell me how long you have. Tell me how long you need to do that work with your current level of work, your current workload, and to the right level of quality that would be acceptable. And then let's defend that. So one of the things that is challenging, I think, is, let's say that it's me and you, and you're part of the team. And I ask you, Nigel, how long do you need for this task? And you say, Clint, that's probably going to take me, based on my current workload, that's probably 3 weeks. And your boss happens to be in the room and he goes, what, 3 weeks? No. Come on, Nigel. Come on, man. You're sandbagging me. Clint, he just needs a week. Just give him a week. And so what we teach in the training and what I do in real life is I would not accept that. I would say, all right, well, let's have a conversation. So, Nigel, why do you think it's 3 weeks? And Nigel, you say, oh, well, it's because I'm working on 4 other projects right now. I got this customer issue that you've asked me to solve, Mr. Boss, that I'm working on as well. And I can't work any of the next 2 weekends because I got my kids these 2 weekends and I can't work. Otherwise, I would be able to help, but I can't. And so then I go to the boss and say, okay, well, boss, why do you think it's 5? And the boss says, well, okay, I didn't realize all this other stuff. So it's not 5, but it's still not 15, because what Nigel doesn't realize is we actually worked on this a long time ago before he came on board the company. And so a lot of that work is already done. It's sitting on the shelf. This needs to be dusted off and finished. And so based on that conversation, I go back and say, okay, Nigel, how long do you need now? And maybe you say it's 10 days. But in the end, and I could do this as an outside person a lot easier than maybe you could as an internal employee. In the end, if the boss says, no, make it 5, then I have literally done this. I've looked at the boss and say, well, how do I spell your name? Because I'm going to put your name as the owner, because I cannot hold Nigel accountable for your duration. It doesn't work that way. And so that's the part, once they see it happen, then they're like, oh, okay, that's how you handle the situation.
Yeah, I get that. It's good. Interesting. The one of the things as part of my Scrum training I did, was quite just nearly 10 years ago now. I thought was fantastic was the estimating phase of it, where they talk about using poker cards,
planning poker.
Yeah. And it's a fantastic idea, because not because you come out with a idea of how long something will take. It's because if you've got a team of 5 people and all 4 of them say it's going to take 5 days, and one of them says it's going to take 6 months, have we missed something? Have those 5 missed something? Because it's those edge cases where they're wildly out of the way that you got to go, hang on a minute, let's have a conversation about this, and that exact sort of thing where the 5 guys are going, all that stuff we've got, we can redo it, and the first guy's going, yeah, but that was on a different version and it's irrelevant, and it's going to take it. If we're going to go through that, it'll take us ages. So we might as well start from the beginning. And you know what I mean? You've got those different opinions there, and it's something that doing those estimates and challenging people on those of kind of, right, why is it there? But it's something I find really difficult, and even with people who are I found quite experienced project managers sometimes, talking to people about duration and effort and getting them to recognize the difference between them, I'm kind of like shaking my head going, well, it, it, well, they're very different things. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of,
We
yeah.
talk
So it's like,
about, there's a lot of ways you can come up with the duration. Actually, we talk about them in the book and in the training class. One of them is based on effort. So if you think in staff hours, then we have something called a 7-step process, which looks at the staff hours required, who's doing the work, because of course that affects the staff hours. What is their availability? Then you have to add a risk factor as if you need 10 days, but it has to be 10 dry days and you can't work in the rain, then how often is it going to rain? All that gets applied, right? But then if you don't work in staff hours, because not everybody does, then there are things you can do, like the planning poker is one option. You can look at experts like yourself. Maybe you're on a different team and say, Nigel, what do you think? What have you seen the other companies you worked at for this task to take? And that would be another data point that I could use. If I'm in construction, I can use means guides, which is basically averages to install pipe or ceiling tiles or whatever, or pour concrete in a certain amount of time. Right. So there's that option. So there's other options. It's just the key for us, at least, the key is I need two things when it comes to duration estimating. I need a reasonable estimate, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, because that's the other thing I was talking about with somebody yesterday, is there's this perception that when you plan a project, it's planned perfectly, and it's planned as perfectly as you can make it at that moment in time, with the knowledge you have. But if your plan is not changing, then somebody's lying to you, because real projects change over time. It's just no way that you can be that good, right? And so with duration estimates, I just need you to be reasonable, and I need your commitment to get it done. So if you tell me 10 days, I may think it's only 5, but if you say you need 10, I'm going to give you 10, but I'm holding you accountable to 10. So I want to see, you got to deliver in day 10. And if you can't deliver in day 10, you need to tell me before day 5 that you can't deliver in day 10 and give me why, so we can adjust. And that's the other beauty, is when you do project planning the way that we do it, which is based on the critical path method, we find that about 10% of the activities in a project are critical, which means they must be done exactly on the dates they were planned, or you're going to be late. But the other 90% have flexibility, something that software calls slack or float, which means they can be at least a day late, sometimes 3 months late. It won't matter. So the beauty is knowing which ones do I need to focus on today, or I'm going to be in trouble, and which ones can I put off until I have availability, which kind of goes back to your effort.
Yeah, I know there was some stuff that we were doing last year with some of the teams on doing some quite intricate planning with lots of dependencies between external dependencies. So there was things that we couldn't start on until somebody else had finished. But as part of that delivery, there was elements of it we could start on. And it was kind of like, okay, so get them out of the way when it's quiet, get them done early, rather than waiting until the other one can, and then start everything. And it was kind of, and people go, yeah, but we'd need to talk to them people twice. It doesn't really matter. Cost is an issue there, but if duration is your paramount, which in these cases there were certain dates we needed to hit with certain releases. But and it's kind of like, well, let's get rid of the stuff that we don't need to do and then join them up at the end. It's going to cost you a bit more, because
it's like a misnomer, because
people. We open something twice, but actually it secures your dates.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's a little bit almost counterintuitive, but you're going to be less efficient but faster.
Yeah,
because you have to touch it twice, so you're less efficient. But by touching part of it early, the back part is quicker. So
yeah, and then essentially, in theory, sometimes like with IT side kind of stuff, you could do a little bit early proving. You maybe not integrated proving, pick up on errors, fix them early that you wouldn't have got until too late. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but I do think there's a lot. Again, those are the constraints, the assumed constraints in planning. There's a lot of those things where people get stuck with those scenarios.
There's 3 reasons when you look at predecessors and successors. There's really 3 reasons why. The biggest one, and the one that you can't change, is physically required. I've got to put the walls up before the roof goes on. That's a physical constraint. I cannot change it. But then there's policy or preference. And the example I love to use that people can really get their arms around. If whatever room you're sitting in, if you had to do 3 things, if you had to put new carpet in, paint the walls, and paint the ceiling, is there a physical order that you must do those 3 things in? And usually when I ask that question, 90% of the room will go, absolutely. And there actually is no physical order that you must do them in.
No.
What they're really saying is there's a more efficient order, there's a preferred order, which of course is ceiling first, carpet last because of gravity.
Yeah.
But I could argue I get the same quality going the opposite, right? I could carpet first, cover the carpet, paint the walls, let the walls dry, cover the walls, paint the ceiling, then take everything up. And we'll get the same level of quality, but boy, it certainly would take a lot longer to do that. So there's policy or preference. And then the third reason is you were talking about earlier, which is restricted resources. I've only got one person who knows AS400, only one person who has this network skill, or one piece of equipment. I've got so much rack space. I've got a cycle to work through this piece of equipment, this set of materials, this person. That would be another reason. But the one you cannot change. We've been talking about challenging the other ones, but the one you can't change is the physically required ones.
Yeah, and it's interesting, that challenge of physical, and you can go even a step further, like you said, with the carpet and that. You could say, well, what we can do to deliver this a bit early, we can half carpet the room, half paint the wall, half paint the roof, half carpet it, and then we can use that half of the room for the office team to come in 3 weeks earlier. We have to put a sheet up in between and do this bit, but they can actually be using it, and you can deliver half your solution of a building early. And it's not optimal. It's not perfect, and the end product isn't finished. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's about perfect. One of your countrymen, Mark Horseman, who from a Manager Tools podcast, who says a lot, stopping perfection being the enemy of the good. And the thing there is, the right way to do something, the most sensible way to do something, isn't always a good way to do something from what your end customer needs. It's a perfect way to do it, but it's not. But you could deliver something nearly as good. And most projects, you talk about ones that are green all the time and run into track, and someone's lying sort of thing. It's the thing that I have a little bit with the time, cost, quality triangle. The challenge I have with that is I can deliver time, cost and quality all in one big chunk. I deliver it all exactly as we set out at the beginning of the project, and that's great. But actually, there would have been opportunities in that delivery to save some money. I could have saved some money. There could have been opportunities in that project to spend more money and deliver more benefits. And therefore, why didn't I talk to someone about doing that? Or there could have been scenarios where we go, actually, let's deliver 20% of this late, because the 80% delivers benefits that are several £1 million straight away, and the 20% only gives £500,000 worth of benefit. Let's deliver that 6 weeks later. But you don't know that until you get through partway through. So I kind of think if you do time, cost, quality, and you hit the triangle perfect, which no one does anyway, but if that's all you're thinking to do, you're only doing half the job of what you should be doing as a manager of a project, which your main job is to get the most out of the resources in delivering that project and deliver benefit, not just deliver the project. It's the benefits that matter, isn't it?
It is. And I think I like the word conversation because I believe strongly in conversations. And, it's funny. So you talk about Agile and Scrum, and obviously I'm a hybrid, somewhere between Agile and Waterfall, right? So I kind of have both pieces in the work that I do. And I'm an adjunct professor at Georgia Tech in the exec ed program. And I had somebody from SCTE, which is the cable industry. I do that class every year. And the first time I did it, I'm in there talking, and this lady looks at me and she said, there's like 30 people in the room. And she stops and she literally rolls her eyes and goes out loud, "Oh my God, he's a waterfall guy." And so I'm like, well, hold on. Explain to me what you mean by waterfall. And of course, if you're an agile person, the way you describe waterfall is something I've never seen happen, by the way. It's you plan it all down to the day on day one for a 2-year project. Nobody ever does any changes, and the customer has to live with whatever got delivered at the end of year 2. I've never seen that happen, right? So I just said, well, listen, let me talk about what my stuff, and you're going to find there's some agile like qualities in that we do 10-day durations or 5-day durations, which kind of sounds like a lot like a sprint. We're going to meet every week to update our project plan. So it's not going to be something that never gets changed, right? And so at the end of the session, I said, so what do you think? She says, well, Clint, I think you're the least offensive waterfall guy I've ever met. So But the key is what you were talking about, Nigel, is we need to have those conversations throughout the project. It's not something you never talk about. So when you learn, hey, there is a better way of doing it, and we should go back to the customer and see if they would agree to an extension of 6 weeks, and that will save the company this amount of money. Or I've been worked on projects where we got halfway through and the business case changed and we killed the project. And we didn't just finish it because the paper said to do it. We actually went back and said, hey, the business case has changed. And this is probably one of the harder things I think I've ever worked on, is when you get halfway through a project and then you have to kill it. The team doesn't want to kill it because they got their blood, sweat, and tears, man. They're committed, right? They've invested in this thing. And you got to, and well, somebody will always say, well, yeah, let's just push it across the finish line and it'll be there if we ever need it. And it's like, no, that's 6 months of time we can devote to things that are going to benefit the company. I understand what you're saying, but we got to kill this project, and that's hard.
Yeah. And it is, I finished off a few projects myself at different times, but not finished them off, but finished them off, if you like, but not intentionally. Just by bad behaviour by me, but I think there is the old waterfall agile battle that's on LinkedIn all the time and things. And I've got one of my previous guests, Adrian Pine, who's kind of is very vocal when people start doing the comparison. The fact that actually they're not project management methodologies, they're engineering methodologies. Either of those. Project management is always been agile. It just hasn't had the badge on it. You've always done these sprints. You had RAD. You had, it's all about, and I think the different focus, and the thing I like about the agile community is the focus on value, and that focus on value makes you kill a project, because if you're looking at business benefit and business value, and I see some of the stuff that PMI's been doing of late, and APM as well. Where they're looking at project success and defining project success. The PMI just did the recent report, and I had one of the team, and my brain's going today, I must be tired, talking about actually recognizing what project success is beyond that delivery of the project. Project success is that benefit realization and the known and unknown benefits that you're going to get out of it beyond when us as project managers run away with our signed off lessons learned thing that goes in the bin. It's kind of, there's a business value is the thing we've always got to look at. And a number of times, I'm sure you've been in a situation where you've been delivering something that's thinking, why the hell is this company doing this piece of work? It's bonkers. And it's because some SVP or VP somewhere decided it was a good idea, and no one is willing to turn around and go, hang on a minute, this is a daft idea, because of that power relationship risk that people have.
One of the first things we do, Nigel, is we with the team develop something called the project charter. And in that project charter, it's one of the places you have the objectives, right? And the primary objectives are the absolute must reasons why we're doing this project. And that would be your business reasons. What are the financial gains to the company of doing this? Then you have secondary objectives, which are more of these are the additional benefits we think will happen if we pull this project off. We don't promise to deliver them, but we think if this project goes through and successful, we think these other things will also be beneficial. And then the last piece, or not the last piece, but another piece we've been talking about is we have something called the time cost trade-off, because there's going to be a deadline that's going to be handed down from somebody, right? Pulled from somewhere. We won't say where it's pulled from, but it's pulled from somewhere. And that's the deadline we got to hit. And so we build our plan and realize we're 6 months late. We can probably make up that lateness, but that's going to cost money to do that. I'm going to have to rent a crane, run a second shift, outsource this, bring in more consultants, whatever that might be. And the question that we need to answer before I can do that is, what is a day on this project worth to us? And I've seen projects where $150,000 to compress a task was worth it, and where $5,000 wasn't on a different project, because it all depends on what a day is worth to you and how much can you save by doing that. So if you know those two numbers, which is something you've kind of been talking about over the last 20 minutes or so, is understanding what is the benefit of finishing this project, and maybe finishing it 6 weeks late, delivering all of it 6 weeks late, it's okay. Yeah. Because there's no benefit to delivering early. I worked on a project for Caterpillar, which was their emissions project. And if you delivered the thing earlier than the government mandate, nobody would buy it. So there's no benefit to it at all. Yeah. But you had to deliver by this certain date, or the being late was an astronomical cost.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's a really good way of looking at it. I've got a friend of mine who runs a marketing business, and they talked about when they're looking at delegation about, and you see the relevance here where they look at jobs that they do as the team, as the leaders and CEOs of their business compared to the team, new junior team members, and he's kind of like, you look at the $10 jobs, $20 jobs, the $100 jobs, the $1,000 jobs. If they're spending all their time doing their $10 jobs, that concept of how much is your time worth, and that, as you say, that duration of knowing a delay's duration. Because I've seen in government where it's legislative. I can't say that today. Legal.
Legislative.
They say it's a legal piece of change. And okay, so there's law going into place, and it has to be in place because of that law. But quite often I see people saying that, and this is the date we're going for. But that date isn't part of the law. The date is something someone's decided, but it is a legal change that needs to be in place, but it doesn't have to be on that date. And quite often you've got to dig under those sort of things, because people say it because they want to make that date because they promised their whoever that date. But actually, it may not get switched on until 3 months later, like this you said with that one there. And I've seen that situation where you've gone, when's it going to start being used? Well. And it's kind of like, yeah, go away. Come back with a real challenge for what you're doing. And if it's just a JFDI, that's a JFDI, fine. But don't come to me saying the law says I've got to do it by a certain date, otherwise someone's in trouble. If someone's made a promise to someone they shouldn't have made a promise, then you have a conversation.
We believe it's very strongly in being transparent. So people will often ask us, well, shouldn't you take your date and make it a month earlier that you're driving everybody to? And my answer is no, because people are smart. And they're going to figure out the date you're driving them to isn't the right date, and they're not going to trust you anymore. So to me, it's, let me tell you the real date, and we're going to work together to make absolutely sure we hit this date. But this is the actual date. It's not, I'm not backing it up 6 weeks and, burning all this rubber to get there. No, we're going to work together to make sure we're on time. But this is the actual date.
I had one where I had the customer was pushing me for a certain date, and I was looking at what we needed to do, and there's rollouts and different things in different buildings and different stuff. It was some sort of telephony type stuff. And it was like, I can't make that date. I can't guarantee that I can make that date. But this is the date I know I can make. And these are the things we can do to try and bring it in to that date you want. I can't guarantee that date. We might be able to do it earlier than that date, but we won't. And that kind of... I always try to do that, because it kind of goes, I'll try, I'm not promising. And I make sure that you don't want to put it, and I always say that the date we're going for is the later one, not the earlier one, because otherwise you've got a stretch target there, which is fine. Whereas if you do it the other way, interestingly enough, the risk statement and assumption statement that's on the slide deck that accompanies the original plan disappears. And then suddenly you've got an executive going, well, it's only said the earlier date to me. No one told me about this other date.
Yeah, 100%. You're spot on. We do that same thing where we say, look, this is the date. Now, if these set of assumptions are true and you give us this additional resources and shipping only takes this amount of time and customs goes well, then we can hit this date. But it has all these caveats associated with it. But here's a date we're working to. And if it comes in earlier than that, everybody wins.
Yeah, and a New York winter doesn't happen or something like that, where you're not going to have snow on the ground stopping us doing stuff. I mean, those are the things that probably won't happen, but if they do, job's good. Great. I just noticed we are coming up on time, and there was one other thing I spotted on your website, which is about your book, How Teams Triumph. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So that one, it came out about 5 years ago now, I guess. And it was on ForbesBooks. And it's really about the people side of managing projects.
Yeah.
So the first book, which is the orange one you see over my shoulder, that one was back in 2009, still in publications, gets used in a lot of college courses on project management.
What's the title of that one? Because it is a bit fuzzy.
It's called the Project Success Method.
Right. Okay, cool.
And so it's more the tactical approach. It's like, what is a predecessor? What is a successor? How do you figure out a duration? How do you build a plan? Who should be kind of some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, who should be in the room. But what I've noticed over my career is, and I can say this because I'm an engineer myself, we're not always the best communicators. Engineers tend to be, if I'm stereotypical for a moment, because there's a grain of truth in this. I want to go back to my cubicle and sit there and design the perfect widget. I don't want to come to your stupid project management meetings. I certainly want to come to your stupid marketing meetings. So that's non-productive time. I could be getting real work done. The problem is, and so what if that person becomes a project manager, I won't call it promotion, but let's say they become a project manager. They say to themselves, I'm going to save the team some time. I'm going to build a project. I know how to do it. I'll just build it for them to save them time. What they're really saying is, I don't like the meetings. I'm assuming nobody likes the meetings. I'm just going to do it for them. But then you're losing all that accountability. You're losing the ability for Joe, Frank, Sue, and Bob to plan their project. And you're making some really bad assumptions about when their availability is, what their strengths are, what their durations need to be. So, the second book was really more about how do I take and convince people that communication and conversation are important, why they should do it, how they should do it, and make them maybe not hate it quite as bad. Right. So it's more the people side of managing projects.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's a thing that I've said before now, and project management is about people. So project management by default is about communication. Because if there's no communication, people don't do and don't know what to do. And when you look at everything that we do, a Gantt chart is a piece of communication. A status report is a communication. A meeting is a piece of the finance report is a set of profit and loss and a balance sheet that is used to inform the share price is communication. So fundamentally, it's all about communication and therefore relationships and how you do that, how you build them, and how you do that. So that's it all boils down to squishy people things and horrible, nasty, squishy people that I know some people in some default way, that's like, why isn't everyone just like me? Life would be a bit easier rather than us having to have this sort of soft relationship kind of thing. So I think it's so important there, and I see it's on your website. You can get there. So as I say, we're coming up on time, and I'm sure I immediately took us down a rabbit hole in the introduction. So I'm sure we've gone different places. There's probably something you would have mentioned or wanted to mention. What if there was? Here's your chance.
Well, I think we covered it right there at the end. And to summarize it, basically, to me, project work is made up of process and people. And everybody wants to focus on the process side, which is activity A takes 5 days, followed by B takes 5 days, duration 10 days. Okay, got that. But that's not what makes projects difficult. What makes projects difficult to pull off is the fact that Joe does A and Sue does B. And they're motivated in a different way. You have to talk to them in a different way. You have to communicate with them in a different way. And so to me, that's the people side. And the people side, you have to do both well to be successful. You have to understand process and people. But I think most people get tripped up by the people side more than they do the process side. People are smart. They'll figure out the technical issues. It's the people they have to struggle with. And you cannot ignore the people unless you don't live in a matrix. If you don't live in a matrix, then okay. You can just beat people up and fire them and go fire new people. But if you live in a matrix, as most of us do, you need to rely on the people to hold themselves accountable because you can't make them do it. And that's the people side of managing projects.
And even when you have got that management power, I don't think it doesn't allow you to do it. You can what you can do with those.
It's not quick because you have to retrain.
You can say to them, if it goes wrong, it's my fault. Because you are ultimately so rather than it being someone out in the matrix side of it, if they do something wrong, they've got to report someone else. You know what I mean? If they trust you, you can do that. But even then, I think it's very difficult to do. Clint, it's been a fascinating conversation. I think there's probably about another 4 or 5 hours.
Absolutely, let's go.
I've certainly got a few more questions popping up there, and again, the things I've looked on your website as well. It's kind of like, there's a few more there, but that's how life is. So if other people wanted to carry on the conversation, obviously I know you've got your podcast, so people could hear more from you on that, I imagine. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you, carry on the conversation? Buy your book.
They can reach me they can look at me on projectsuccess.com.
Okay.
And they can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm Clint Padgett on LinkedIn, Padgett. You can go to clintonpadgett.com, which is my personal brand website, but projectsuccess.com is probably the easiest way. And I'm just Clint Padgett at projectsuccess.com if you just want to email me.
Brilliant. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show. And I hope you have a brilliant rest of your day.
Thanks, Nigel. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Clint.
Yes.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.